Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Boom, and welcome to the Big Honker Podcast, brought to you by our friends at Lucky Duck. I'm Jeff Stanfield with the world-famous Andy Shaver.
You know, the introduction is that's like my deal, and I hit that one in the sweet spot.
I don't even think people even notice your sweet spot.
You got to come down. You got to come down at a certain time. You got to turn the cameras on, and
it's about the 3, 2, 1 boom.
that was a dinger. Well, no, I've got to match up your 3,
about.
2, 1 boom.
Do you remember how we started that 3, 2, 1 boom?
I have no idea.
It was just an accident.
I don't know.
I didn't know what to say.
Well, you still don't.
You go 3, 2, 1, I go boom. So there we go. All right, with us today from, I think it's Battle Creek, Michigan. Am I right?
That's right.
Close. Plainwell, Michigan.
How far is that from Battle Creek?
About a half hour.
Oh.
We just moved last year, so I don't. It's not that Battle Creek's a terrible place, but I'd much rather be associated with Plainwell.
I'm assuming Battle Creek must be not be a very good place to be, is what I'm getting at. What about you, Andy?
Starting to wonder.
It must be a Democratic ran place.
Oh yeah,
There you go.
for sure. It used to be it still is a cereal city. That's what they're known for, cereal. But a lot of those industries have moved out. So
You know, they had a thing on Netflix, a series called Battle Creek, and it's about an FBI agent there. And there's a lot of shit going on there, so you could tell. Run by Democrats. It's a blue city. Anyways,
Well, hold on. Explain. It was about an FBI, like it was a true story?
No, it was just a series on Netflix about an FBI agent that lived in Battle Creek, Michigan. And they had cerealed hay, and y'all like a cereal festival, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what they're known for. But like Kellogg's is moving out of there. That's the big one. Post has pretty much moved out. So
what the hell? What is it about Battle Creek, Michigan, that all these cereal companies?
That's where it started at. Let me give him a history lesson.
School me,
okay?
Jeff.
Okay.
Ding ding, motherfucker.
First of
School's
all,
in session.
Corey Lucas with Cedar Run Decoys is on with us.
Okay.
Used to be from Battle Creek, but he's
The
not Battle
shithole
Creek.
that is Battle Creek,
Yes.
Michigan.
Battle Creek, Michigan is where.
my wife's listening. She's a Battle Creek native. She's gonna love that.
Well, sorry, ma'am. Hate to tell you this, but you're moving on up when you got out of Battle Creek. The cereal company there, Kellogg, had a hospital, and he was a doctor there, and he treated crazy people.
You fucked this all up.
No,
already, but
no,
go
I
ahead.
have not
Go
either.
ahead.
Anyways, he had a sanitary. What do they call that? Where they crazy a fucking wacko ward there,
Like asylum.
Asylum, yes. And he treated people, and people would go to him for all kinds of ailments and stuff. And he came up with this cereal, with this corn cereal and brand to make people say shit and be healthy. He thought, well, one of his patients there who was trying to get himself better was a guy named Post. Post went to work, was there, learned this secret formula, started his own cereal company, and that's where you have Post and you have Kellogg's. Post
In Michigan.
Yes.
In Battle Creek, Michigan.
Marjorie Post was the girl. Her dad died at a young age, and she inherited this, and they didn't think she could run it. Well, she did run it pretty good, but she had the insight to buy Bird's frozen foods and how they would flash freeze stuff, and that's Bird's frozen foods. She built a place in Florida called Mar-a-Lago, and that's where and that is where Trump is now. That's the basic story about Michigan and cereal, but that is the cereal capital of the world.
Are you pulling that? Like, do you have Wikipedia up
No.
in front of you and you're just reading it? Like, how do you where's this coming from?
I'm a lot smarter than I sound. And I'm a lot smarter than my writing, which is grammatically not correct.
So,
but I read a lot and I pay attention a lot. Do I have any Wikipedia in front of me, Andy? No.
And you did it all online, like it's on YouTube, so like you can see. Plus, like that would have been some fast. Our internet is not fast enough for him to pull that out of his.
Well, I got mad respect for that being able to pull that kind of information up just off the top of your head.
Now, do you want to know how he came up with cornflakes? The true story about how he came up with
they welted overnight.
No.
Yes, they did too.
I'm
they
telling
set
you
them out and they got
why
soggy.
he did it.
Well, go ahead and tell me.
It was because he thought what you ate made you horny. So he thought if he could make a bland tasting food that you could sustain yourself on, you would not have sexual desires. So he made cornflakes.
Well,
Didn't they start like the Seventh Day Adventist Church too? Is that a thing?
that I don't.
I don't know if you guys.
That I don't know for sure,
We
but I
do
do know this.
But that's why he made cornflakes.
The breakthrough with cornflakes is they set them out overnight and they wilted up, and they figured out, you know what, these things. That's how the cereal, the cornflake, came around. Post Toasties used that same deal to come out with Post Toasties, but it was by accident that they did it. But that's how the cereal business was boomed, was that, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And I would like to go to Battle Creek because I'd like to see the two mansions there from the two families.
Well, I mean, that might be one of the only reasons to go back there.
I've no other reason to go to Battle Creek, Michigan, other than that. I do love Michigan. I'm telling you.
I've got a lot of friends there, so I'm not trashing on it too hard. I'm not from there. I'm from the boonies. You know, I'm kind of up in the country north of Battle Creek, so that's why I couldn't really relate to it too much. But didn't you just recently come here?
Yeah, we were in Indian River, and it was absolutely beautiful. And we're going to probably go back to Upper Michigan next year. I love it. Michigan is a beautiful place. Great people. Y'all just got that fucking ignorant bitch in fucking Lansing that's ruining the whole country, or y'all's whole state.
I knew that was coming up. I knew you couldn't go through this whole podcast without a Whitmer reference.
He didn't make it 10 minutes. And I've got to retract something. This is just an urban legend to stop masturbation. John Harvey Kellogg advocated against masturbation and recommended cornflakes as a means to stop masturbating. But the cornflake cereal was invented for patients at the mental hospital. It was never actually advertised as an anti-masturbatory morning meal.
I thought prostitutes were designed to keep you from masturbating.
I just think there were a lot of poor people, and that's all they had to sell then.
The healthiest people in the world are 14-year-old boys, and they all masturbate every time they shower. So what's the problem?
Okay.
That's the truth. I mean, is it a lie?
I don't know. I was busy at 14, so
That's
I didn't have. I was busy with other stuff. I didn't have time.
Yeah, bullshit on that. So, anyways, you're a biologist, correct?
Yeah, I would say I was a biologist up until about 8 months ago, when I kind of transferred into full time here at Cedar Run. But yeah, my background's in biology. That's kind of what kicked off this passion.
How did the two tie together? Like, what do you mean you say biology kicked this off for you?
So I've always kind of been an outdoors kind of guy, even as a young kid, running down to the local stream, fishing, playing in the woods, like a lot of people in Michigan grow up doing. I kind of got tangled up in the civil engineering world for about 15 years. So that's kind of where my career started. And then I just couldn't sit in a cubicle any longer and do that kind of work. So I started following what I felt my skill set was best suited for, and that was wildlife biology. So went back to school, got my degree in biology, worked for the Michigan Department of Natural Resources for a few years while I was getting that degree. And then I ended up becoming the operations director at a environmental research institute where we did a lot of wildlife habitat work, a lot of research on various game species and non-game species.
And then,
so, just that involvement in the research end of things and the habitat end of things. And at that same time, I was going back to school to become a biologist. I got involved in duck hunting. Mm-hmm. So everything kind of came to fruition all at the same time. Like I grew in all those areas in that same decade. So that's kind of been the progression for me.
And then, so that is when you started. So you didn't waterfowl hunt as a kid as much, or did your passion just wasn't as what it is now?
Yeah, I just didn't know about it.
Oh.
I mean, there's no one in my, I tell people this and they're kind of shocked by it, but there's no one in my immediate family, no one in my extended family that hunts.
Wow. So
even though I grew up farming and I grew up in a rural community, no one on my dad's side of the family, no one on my mom's side of the family. My mom has a big family. None of my brothers and sisters, uncles and aunts, nobody hunted. So I didn't have any resources there to teach me as a young kid. No one fished either, or if they did, very little. And so where I grew up, we had access to a trout stream that was, a few hundred yards away. So I'd spend every summer day down there. And I just grew kind of by my own will. Mm-hmm. in those areas. And then I had some buddies that got me into deer hunting when I was in my teens. And then I just deer hunted pretty religiously until right around my late 20s. And then I had a couple buddies who have been bothering me for a few years to go duck hunting. And then I got married, and actually at my in-laws at the reception, these buddies came over, and we're all standing out back, and they got a 7-acre pond back there, and these ducks are flying around. They're like, dude, you got to get into duck hunting. You got to hunt this, you know? And so I did, and I was hooked on day one. So
now what's amazing is your carving, you're a very accomplished carver. I mean, there's not a lot of guys that carve decoys and make a living doing decoy carving. But you learned how to do it by getting a book at Western Michigan College, correct?
Yeah, I mean, YouTube was available at those times, but it's not something you really learn on YouTube, and it's hard to learn something like carving without doing it hands-on, you know, or learning from somebody who's showing you right there in that moment. But I started with going, you know, when I was going to school, I went down to the basements. I had to go into the basements of Western Michigan University to find these books, but they had carving books. They had like 3 or 4 carving books, and they had patterns in them. So I pulled those patterns off, and I was able to whittle something that looked like a duck. In fact, my first duck was a blue-winged teal, because I figured start small. And then I kind of played around with that for a couple years, and then I got connected with a master carver who actually owns a carving supply company here in Michigan called the Duck Blind. So Willie McDonald, who owns that, I took a class from him, and that kind of just sparked a few things in my mind. It got me to see the bird a little bit better. And I had been accustomed to holding birds, you know, as a hunter, and I was working for the DNR, so I was banding ducks. So I was really accustomed to seeing how ducks look and the feel for them and things like that. And so, yeah, a lot of it was self-taught, but I was able to have some guidance along the way. But I like to learn kind of the traditional way. If you get caught up in YouTube and Instagram and learning everything that way, you're just you're cookie cuttering everything. You're just doing something someone else has already done, and I didn't really want to do that.
Did you work at all with wood? I mean, going back to Jeff's joke as a 14-year-old, so I mean, obviously that, but had you ever like carved or anything like that growing up?
Yeah, you know, me and my brothers, when we were about 8 years old, carved like a nativity scene out of 2x4s. Wow. I don't know why. It's just random. My dad was always an avid woodworker, but we never really got into it. He's got a nice woodworking shop, and he's done that for our entire life. Right. But it's funny because that's the one thing I can remember from about, 25, 30 years ago that I did was carve this nativity set. And for a 8-10-year-old kid, it was pretty darn good. So maybe it was just kind of this God-given talent. I'm still grasping with the word talent, but I had a passion for it, I think, way back then. And my dad always had the tools around so we could play around with things like that.
It amazes me how things come full circle. Like, totally. Like, had you not duck hunted ever, probably wouldn't be making decoys if you'd still be in that cubicle. And, there was this passion that you didn't even know that you had from the time that you were 8 years old. And then it kind of reemerges in this organic way 2 decades later. It's insane.
It's, like a lot of people are scared. I had a lot of people tell me when I made the move to leave my job. I had a very good job in conservation. Like most people would be like killed for that job. And so when I left, a lot of people were saying like, man, you got some balls to do that. And I'm like, well, this isn't the first time I've done this, right? Like I left a really good career in civil engineering to go into wildlife biology. So it's not the first time I've made that leap. And I also believe, like you said, I look back at all those things that have come to culmination now. It's kind of like led me to this point where I could be successful at it and do some things that maybe haven't been done in the carving world yet, or incorporate some other aspects of duck hunting into the carving world. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you're right. It's been a culmination.
Are you happy?
Yeah,
that's what counts.
It's work. Like people will say, "Hey, I'd love to, carve." It's like you guys. I'm sure people are I'd love to hunt. Mm-hmm. Well, it's work for you guys, right? And it's work for me. So it's a lot of, it's still 80 to 100-hour weeks to get jobs out the door. But I'm not complaining. That's that's why I'm doing it.
If you
is to be able to carve.
if it's something that you like to do, then it makes your job a whole lot. It's not always going to work. Every job has got something bad. Every day, everybody that's doing what they like has a day that they don't enjoy that day, or an hour or something. But
that fucking cubicle looks nice every once in a while.
But it's like a truck driver. I like to drive and stuff, and I could have been a truck driver. I would have enjoyed that because I like seeing a lot of things. There's a lot of truck drivers that listen to us. They're thinking, I'd trade with you in a heartbeat. Well, if you like to drive and you like to open a road, that would be a fun job to me. I couldn't do a decoy carver because I don't have the patience. Now, I would like to carve a decoy on my own one day, and that's something I would like to do. The hard part to me would be the painting. Is that the hardest part?
Yep. Most people can carve a good-looking bird or a decent-looking bird, and even like paint is like you might be able to get something to look like the bird you're trying to carve. It's just like taking it to the next level, and there's a lot of different levels. And as you know, Jeff, collecting decoys, there's a lot of different levels in the decoy carving world. I mean, you can get into immense detail, or you can just basically paint a milk jug type thing. So there's a lot of different levels you can get into. I have to stay in my lane and kind of stay in these gunning decoys that balance detail and kind of basic patterns. But I think almost everybody could carve a decoy. It's just a step-by-step process. But like you said, I think the talent or the skill comes into the painting aspect.
That's what I noticed the difference between the decoys that I have here. Like sitting in front of me right now, I've got a John Kaczynski done this for me, and this is the one of my dad. It's my dad. Everybody can see it on the YouTube. This is the video. This is my dad right here. His ashes are in this one. And then I've got a Captain Job's one here. That's the World Championship from Trevor Shanahan gave us. That's up here also. Well, they're different type decoys, but they're both collector's items to me. I like them. I enjoy them both. At my house, I have an old cedar Canada gunner decoy that's got splits in it. It's old. It's kind of has cracks in it and splits. And that decoy's got to be 50 to 70 years old, and I don't even know where I got it from. But I had two of them, but the neck snapped on one of them, and Michelle threw it away. And it just wears me out that she ever done that. But I've got one of them still there. But
yeah, I think you nailed it. That's what I liked about the decoy carving world too, is that nothing's junk, really, because it's a balance between that artistic, kind of an art piece and in my case, a functional piece. And so like, are you going to walk up to an artist and be like, yeah, that's junk? I mean, some of us might to some people, but generally you're going to be like, oh, that's cool because it's different or it's unique.
Yeah. I took art appreciation class in college, and I had a professor, and he was a real twat waffle, but he was an art teacher. And me and him had some discussions, and he did not like me at all. He did not like anybody who was a jock, and I think he thought I was playing college football. But anyways, we got into it one time.
Dick. All the time you're an ass.
Well, I probably was, but he had a painting of an eggplant and an old gourd or something, and he was just admiring it all. And I was like, what the fuck? That's nothing special about it. And he asked me, he goes, well, who's your favorite artist? And I didn't want to say Georgia O'Keeffe because she is a good artist, but not my favorite. And I said, I like Terry Redlin. He goes, that's not art. What do you mean it's not art? I said, he's more successful than whoever done that fucking eggplant and squash deal that you've got here. And he did not like that. So I made a D in his class, and I was probably happy I got that D. But how can you not call Terry Redlin a great artist?
I don't know.
Do you not like Terry Redlin?
No, he's fine, but I mean, I think he's a good. I don't know where the guy was getting at. I don't know.
Because his art
wasn't his style.
It wasn't his style, and so he didn't like it. But he was putting it down. But it's all whatever you like. Like there are all kinds of decoys out there. There are some that are really, I don't know what you call it, not prehistoric, but they're nothing fancy. And to me, they're as cool looking as one that's painted perfect. And some of them are too pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the balance that I've found too. And honestly, I have to make money doing it. So like if I spend 8 hours painting a bird, I can't make a living doing it. So I have to do something that's acceptable enough where people feel good about putting it on a shelf, because a lot of people do purchase them just as gifts, and set them on a mantle. But I also have to keep them affordable enough where people can hunt over them. And I've gotten, large rigs that I've done that, I got to keep the paint somewhat basic so that, you know, it doesn't cost them a fortune to build a rig of 100 birds. So it's a balance for me, and it's definitely, my heart was always in the hunting side of it. And the art side of it was not ever on my mind. It's always been like, that was my initial thought, was I wanted to build ducks so I could hunt over, not because I wanted to put them on a mantle and say, oh, they look cool. And so, like, at the core of it, I want to stay based in hunting. That's who my, you know, my clientele is. That's where my passion is. That's who I hang out with, you know, so that's kind of where, that's my sweet spot.
You hit on something. I had a client of mine years ago, and I thought he's a cool dude, and these are the kind of guys that you have as customers. He had 24 teal decoys that were hand carved, and he hunted over them on his own. And he carved them, and he hunted them, and he used an old double barrel Parker shotgun or something. And I thought, that's a cool dude. When I get old, I want to be like that. Well, I'm old now, and I never made it to that. But what a cool dude, though, that hunted over decoys he carved himself. And when he showed me his decoys, they were nothing fancy. But I thought, man, what an interesting fella, you know. You can hunt over some G&H back then, teal decoys, or you can hunt over some you carved yourself. And I'm sure his grandkids or somebody hasn't. Now his kids probably sold them for $10 a piece at a garage sale. But what a cool dude. And those are the kind of guys that you have as clients, don't you?
Yep. I've had, you know, there's a lot of it over on the East Coast. So, you know, we're here in the Mississippi Flyway, and there's some decoy tradition if you go over on the east side of the state, Saginaw Bay, Lake St. Clair. And even down, you know, as you go down the Flyway, Mississippi and Arkansas, there's some decoy history there. But where you really hit it big is over on the East Coast. You know, your Atlantic Flyway, there's still a lot of people over there that hunt over hand carved or traditional decoys. So that's a large amount of my clientele come from the East Coast, and they'll do anything from, you know, like 3 dozen to, I've had, you know, well over 100 decoys in a rig, and it depending on what they're hunting, divers or dabblers. And so, like, they really, their whole goal is to hunt the traditional way and then pass this down to their kids, you know. And we customize them in a way that you know, it commemorates them. So the keels are usually engraved with their name or, you know, icon or whatever. And that's a way for them to kind of ensure that their legacy is getting passed down too.
That's badass.
What gets me is I've got a Job canvasback in my office in my case, and that sucker weighs, I don't know, 3-4 pounds maybe. And I couldn't imagine trying to carry 2 dozen of them suckers into the damn into hunting.
Yeah, and they get heavier when they're wet. I mean, I don't care what you do to seal them up. They're gonna get heavier, and that's really is a concern of a lot of the waterfowlers out there, especially on those bigger rigs where you got to look at weight, you know, weight capacity in a boat, and you've got 100 birds and they're made out of cork with weighted keels. You really start to try and whittle that, no pun intended, but whittle that weight down.
Now, are your decoys made out of cork?
Yeah.
Out of cork.
Yep.
Now this.
Yeah, so the cork bodies, basswood heads.
Okay, now this is going to be a stupid question, and this is going to, anything that I said earlier that might have made me sound kind of smart, this is probably going to end all of that right now. Because I got this from my wife, and she's a blonde. And I married her because she was really good looking, not because she was really smart.
Oh, we're on the same page, but my wife's pretty smart. Okay. I'll give her that. She's smart.
Well, my wife's got 2 college degrees, but you know, that doesn't mean you're smart all the time. Anyways, and she's an intelligent lady, but sometimes she has some blonde moments. She told me that cork is a shortage now because of the wine industry. Is there any truth to that? That's a no, or he would have answered.
So, that's not a stupid question because I don't know the honest answer to that. I'll tell you that a lot of the cork that's used here is a byproduct of the wine industry. So when they take that cork and they stamp out those wine corks for bottle stoppers, they grind up that excess and then they bind it back together into big sheets, and that's what I work with. You know, the suppliers out of Portugal. So just like anything, you know, right now prices have gone up dramatically because of the shipping costs and just labor costs, right? But the cork itself is 100% renewable because they're just stripping the bark off the cork tree. So they really shouldn't, unless you have this huge spike in wine consumption, which we had during COVID, right? So there may be some truth to a slight shortage there, but I think it's probably in shipping.
Do you still have your first carving?
Yeah. It's embarrassing. Most carvers will take a pattern on their first decoy and it'll start out life size, and by the time they're done with it, it's about half size.
Half the size it's
That's
supposed
what
to
happened
be.
with mine. Is just
Do you have it? Do you have it by you?
Oh, I can grab it. Yeah,
I'd like
it's
to
behind
see
the
it.
wall.
Jeff wants to see if you
Yeah,
can grab it real
I'll grab my first
Okay.
two.
I'm sure it's just like anything. Like I can remember.
There is not a cork shortage either.
There's not.
No, it just said actually there's really an abundance of it's cork oak tree.
Yeah, it's a cork tree, Jeff.
No, it's cork oak.
Everybody knows that.
Oh, do they? Where do they grow them at then?
Michigan.
No.
But I can remember when I was
He
first
just told you, man.
when I
Go-
was first learning how to goose call. Like, it sounds terrible, but you gotta start somewhere. All right, he's back.
Let's see what you got.
Let's see it.
All right, so I'm going to show you my first. This is my first decoy I ever carved. This is carved out of basswood, and this is the blue-winged teal.
That's beautiful.
So-
Pretty damn good, if you ask me.
What's embarrassing about that?
You know, look at how small it is.
you know,
I
you-
mean,
The
that's
size of a teal.
You shoot some little ones.
this is my first cork bird, and this was after taking some lessons from somebody that knew what they were doing. So this is my first cork
That's
decoy.
really nice.
Very good.
And again, what you see is a problem with paint. I mean, it's just paint is what you gotta just spend a lot of time doing.
Let me see the blue wing teal again, the first one with the painting.
It's perfect.
I think it looks good.
Beautiful.
Show. Do you have a blue wing teal there that you've done lately?
I've got a blue-winged teal that I hunt with. Yeah, it's right
And you've
behind
done
me.
it recently, right?
In the last 2 or 3 years.
Let's
Yeah.
see the difference.
All
But
right.
there's not.
I bet there ain't much
There's
difference
not
either.
a ton.
No, people that are good.
That's
with stuff,
really good though.
I would have been fucking. I've been showing that some bitch to everybody. I've been driving around town showing people.
My first carving looked like a fucking stick figure
Yeah.
compared to a real person.
Okay.
Honestly, I've only shown that carving to maybe 3 or 4 people
Well,
in my
that's
life.
changed now.
That
It's
first
really
one.
good. Yeah, you showed it to a lot more just now, but that's awesome.
No, like 4 or 5
Yeah,
now, right?
exactly. It's just Jeff and I.
So this is one that I hunt over. That's a cork.
Well, that is
That's
beautiful.
a cork gunner that I've had for. It's all dirty. It's all muddy. from
I
hunting
can
South
tell the
Dakota.
difference in the beak and the head already between the two.
And just the size,
Yes.
right? Like it's kind of hard to get those both. But look at
Your first one is still very good. The painting is definitely different, and the beak. Can you show that again? The beak is definitely the difference in the beaks too.
yeah. And if you see it in person, there's some different highlights in the heads and stuff that you can't see on camera. But yeah, that's what I like about carving. It's the growth process. You're never gonna reach your full potential, right? Like it just gets better every single time you carve a bird. And so there's I think a lot of jobs, and I got this way too, like especially in the civil engineering field, where you feel like you kind of reached a point where you're like, yeah, I've got this. I'm going through the routine. With carving, every single bird I carve, I'm constantly trying to get better and quicker, you know. So it is something that I'm going to continue to push myself, you know, until I die. And it's also a job and a passion you can do until you die. You know, it's not.
How long did it take you to do the first bird?
Oh, probably 15 to 20 hours.
How long does it take you now if you were going to do a blue-winged teal?
A blue-winged teal, about 3.5.
Wow.
And that's paint and
Yeah.
everything.
Yep.
Damn.
Yep. Start to finish.
So you can crank it out in before lunch. If you start at 9, you're wrapping it up right before lunch.
Yeah, you could if you didn't have
Drying
all
time.
the dry times. But yeah, just the number of hours. Yep.
So you
Yep.
can knock out.
And that's the only way.
You can
Go
knock out
ahead.
2 a day then.
Yeah. Yep.
So how do you
Is that-
manage your workload? Are you carving all one day and then painting all the next, or do you kind of do a mixture of everything every day?
It depends on where I'm at with orders. I generally am running, 40 to 50 birds in the queue. So I've got, I already know what my next 40 or 50 birds are on the orders. and I'm trying to push them out. I'm trying to get birds out every, like, no longer than 3 to 4 weeks lead time. So it depends. Like, I'll collect a queue, and then if I got, like, let's say I've got 12 mallards in that queue, then I'll do all the mallards at once, carve them all out, get them all to the paint phase, and then usually I'll start some other birds so that the heads can be drying, and then the next day I seal them. So there's a lot of birds at different stages all the time.
Now,
so
is that kind of hard because for me, I don't know, it would kind of be hard to just kind of be everywhere all at once rather than, okay, I got to focus on just painting today. But that might not necessarily be the most effective way of doing it. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, I would love to it just be like, all I'm going to do is paint today. And there's been days like that. But like you said, it's not. Then all of a sudden I'm a day behind on the birds that are following that bird because I didn't get those heads dried.
Right.
I didn't get those heads glued up. So I have to bounce around. Mm-hmm. In some of the larger orders, I will focus on just one order for like 2 weeks straight, mm-hmm. right? Just to get that out the door, and then focus on my 10 other orders. So it all depends on what's coming in the door. But generally, I like to be working a bunch of birds at different steps of the process the whole time.
Now, is that something did you just learn that on your own? Like, hey, this is the process that works best for me, or when you were going to this renowned carver, did he kind of tell you, hey, this is kind of my workflow?
No, it's been a process I've developed myself because it fits like my mm-hmm. style. There's plenty of people produce I don't want to say mass producing, but producing a lot of hand carved decoys. They're not anybody I know, to be honest with you. So I'm kind of developing my own systems. A lot of the people that are carving a lot of decoys are either doing really, really minimal carving paint jobs, to mass produce them, or they're spending, 50 hours on one bird. I saw in the market that there was kind of a lack of access to these carvers that could carve a really good looking bird for relatively inexpensively. And so I kind of fit in that market, but there's not really anybody to bounce ideas off from and figure out what they're doing. Plus, like I said, I want to be unique and I kind of want to have my own way of doing things.
Right. That makes sense. How much did you research the decoy market at all before you dove off into this, or is this just kind of something that you kind of got in where you fit in?
I had been carving for probably 8 or 9 years, and so I had been following other carvers, and one thing I saw that was kind of lacking was access to a carver. Like, if you want hand carved decoys, how would you go about doing it, right? If you didn't live next to a carver or know someone personally. So I just wanted to open the door for people. And so I started with like, hey, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to create a really good brand, in my eyes, a good brand with easy access to ordering and prices, and timelines. That all those things were kind of, in my mind, they were lacking a little bit. And like I said, the big thing for me was creating a brand that was more than just me carving decoys. Like in a lot of our social media stuff will be other things besides just whittling decoys. Because I had a background in conservation, I wanted to stay in that world. And so sharing with people, other aspects of what I do, whether it's duck banding or it's wild rice restoration, just trying to share more of this holistic approach to traditional waterfowling and duck hunting and conservation, more than just showing them my shop.
Right. That makes more sense. How much do you pretty much have every duck memorized by now, or when you start like a mallard, do you have to pull up a picture of what you're wanting to do, or do you pretty much have all that memorized?
No, it's, you kind of brought up a good point there. When I'm doing painting, I have a big screen right in front of my paint booth, And I have all these reference photos, and I'm constantly adding reference photos to them because I don't want to stay in the same. I want these to be unique to the customer, so it's okay if they change color and shape. And so I've progressed in painting by using different reference photos. Like that's ultimately how I kind of change that scheme, but nothing's memorized. I still have just pages and pages of notes on like how to mix these colors for mallards, and then I'll add to those notes every time I do a new batch. The carving process, when I first started, I'd have to do all these guidelines to make sure things were centered and, they looked right. And now I can get away with very few guidelines, because you've done so many of them that you just know where things should be. And your eye kind of just adjusts to symmetry. Like, you can feel it and you can see it a lot better. So that's where I have to get faster. I had to get faster. And to do that, I had to try and take some of the steps out.
Have you had any accidents, like cut your finger or anything like that? That'd be my biggest hold up starting to work with that wood like that.
That is my number one concern is injury, because like there's no one, like you can't keep up with producing these decoys if I get injured. There's not like someone who's going to step in and carve. And I told my wife I'll eventually end up cutting off a finger, but it hasn't happened yet. I had a couple instances this Christmas that I had some injuries, but they were unrelated to carving. Like we do like cut your own tree, for Christmas time. Go out in the field. Griswold. And I've done a ton of timber work, a ton of timber work in the conservation world. Like I've used chainsaws, never even nicked myself with a chainsaw for years and years and years. And they gave us like these little hand saws, and I get under the tree, and my youngest daughter's there, my wife and our two nephews, and I'm sawing on this tree, and all of a sudden I pull the saw out, and it just slices right through it. Just gapes it open. It's bleeding everywhere. My wife sees it. She's like, "Oh my gosh." And it was right during the middle of like this big order I had to get out the door by the end of the year. And it was ironic that I ended up like pretty severely injuring myself cutting a Christmas tree down and not carving, but that's been my biggest fear for sure. I kind of feel like I'm in that the same group as like the surgeons, where they're very protective of their hands. Your hands are
your profession.
Yeah. Like, except they're worth 10 times what I am. Outside of that,
give it time. Give it time. Yeah. Just it's a marathon, not a sprint.
On you, can you pick that old squall up behind you and show that to the camera?
Yeah, you want the one with the long tail?
The long tail one.
Oh, you're a pain in the ass today.
I'm looking at this on his page. Look at that decoy. That is absolutely. Look at the craftsmanship on that.
Beautiful.
That is amazing. Now, is the tail a separate piece of wood that you stick in there?
Yeah, the tail is it's kind of hard to see on there, but the tail is basswood that's separately carved and then epoxied in there. So that one's not really a hunting decoy. So I've done like a bobtail version where you have a more functional, that's all epoxy tail.
That long-tailed one is absolutely, both of them are beautiful. That long-tailed bird is amazing.
Yeah, thank you. It's a big thing here in Michigan. Like long-tail hunting has exploded.
We've got a couple of them mounted here that I had a guy from Michigan or Wisconsin. I guess Dan's from Wisconsin, so he'd get mad about that. Oh yeah, nice move by Juwan Howard the other day, slapping the coach from Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm a Michigan fan, so that was kind of tough to. I don't know what you think about that, but we've had some excitement in our coaches, both with Harbaugh.
Well, Harbaugh wanted out, but y'all just signed him to an extension.
He didn't want out.
He wanted the Minnesota job. They didn't offer it to him, right?
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
9-hour meeting is what I saw.
Well, in his 9 hours, he lost the job, and they hired the guy from the Rams. But then Michigan thought they were going to lose him. They signed him to an extension, and then Juwan Howard slaps the coach from Wisconsin, which Blake would probably enjoy that much. But what a fucked up mess. You can't slap another coach. I don't give a shit what he calls you or what he does or what happened. You can't slap a guy like that. That's bad luck.
It'd be real hard to talk to any of the kids playing on your team about anything they do on the court after that, right?
Well, off the court.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We had a big brouhaha in a high school game here or in our area, not from Knox City. So.
As a school board member at another school, are you illegal? Are you allowed?
It's on fucking YouTube, Jeff.
Okay, so that makes it okay. Okay,
it's on YouTube. So this kid There's just a husband and wife. They're at this game. The losing, they're rooting for the team that ends up winning. As the kids comes off, he gets into a verbal altercation with.
You're opening up a can of worms.
It's on fucking YouTube, Jeff.
I know, but I'm just telling you are.
How am I opening up a can of worms?
Go ahead.
I'm not speaking in any specifics. I'm giving a general overview of what happened. Anyway, the kid gets in this old man's face. The guy's 67 years old. The old man kind of pushes him. A kid from basically the town that ends up winning, their fight. But anyway, old man and a 18-year-old kid get into a big scuffle at a high school basketball game. All hell breaks loose on the court. I mean, it was it's on YouTube. You can look at it. Seymour Petrolia basketball fight. They fucking go at it.
God almighty.
I was fortunate enough to witness the Malice at the Palace.
Oh, really?
Like, I wasn't there, but I was watching the game at the time.
Yeah.
Right. And that is ingrained in my head. Like, it was like watching WWE or something. It's just unbelievable when you see that stuff happen. Like, in real life.
It's crazy. There's and I guess it's because access to the players is so easy. It's much easier in a basketball game, but that's where you see all the big fights. It's not at a football game where you think it would be. I think it's just because people can get on the court so easily.
I was at a Brewers-Rangers game when they had a brouhaha, and it's a pretty big fight. They fought for a while.
Really?
Fuck yeah, it was a big-time fight. A guy, I think Kevin Reimer was the guy's name that played for the Brewers. He used to play for the Rangers, and he kicked a guy with his spikes and cut the dude's fucking forehead open. I don't remember all the specifics, but it was a big-ass fight. And then what else was I was at? Oh, I'll tell you one of the most interesting things I ever seen is I took the boys when they were little to a SmackDown wrestling deal, and it was The Rock and Steve Stone Cold Austin got there, and there ain't nothing better a bunch of fucking rednecks that are wrestling after they've been drinking beers. There was more action in the stands than there was actually down on the ring. It was greatness. I loved it.
Yep. My 9-year-old daughter, which is crazy because we don't watch it. I didn't grow up on it. We don't watch it, but through school, she's got connected with it. And she's just a sweetheart, artistic. She loves professional wrestling. Loves it. Yeah. So I'm going to have to take her one of these days.
It's just theater is all that it is. I mean, it's a redneck version of
ballet.
Well, not that, but it's Shakespeare. Is all that it is.
Great
it's just poetry in motion.
Great athletes
for rednecks.
Big guys that are great athletes.
They don't realize it, but yeah, you're watching a soap opera that's taking place in the physical form.
Some of those people still think it's real.
They can't by now, Jeff. Fucking cat's out of the bag.
Oh,
my daughter's never thought it was real.
There's a lot of people that do.
2 or 3.
They think this OS has got to be real.
Well, and I'm not saying that they don't take a physical. There's an aspect that is real, but the outcomes are definitely predetermined.
So, do you think that Juwan Howard's 5-game suspension? Do you think that was enough? They should have fired that. I would have fired him.
I thought they were going to fire
him.
I did. I was like, well, how do you come back from that? And it would be one thing if they were having a killer season. I mean, I know that's sad to say, but I think that plays a role if you're one of the top teams, but they haven't been playing well. Something like that, I would have thought at least through the end of the rest of the season, maybe into next year, something bigger than 5 games.
Lot of drama there with the Michigan basketball, the Fab Five. And then that coach got fired right as the tournament started because he was going to take a job at Arizona. And then he goes to Arizona State, and that's where the big point shaving scandal was.
From Headache?
Huh?
Headache?
Headache.
Is that who you're talking about?
That show that was on with the sports deal. And it was
Headache.
Was that his name?
I think his name was Headache.
Okay. That was the coach that was at Michigan during the Fab Five. Bad Sport on Netflix. Pretty interesting.
I've been meaning to watch that Malice in the Palace on Netflix. They did a whole big documentary on it.
Was that Ron Artest in that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually haven't watched it because I watched the real thing and I was like, I don't know what this is going to tell me any different. But there was a lot leading up to that game, and so that's why I was watching. I was like, oh, there's some bad blood here, and sure enough, it just exploded in that
I would
game.
love to be able to bring a team from back in the past to come back to play today. First thing I would like to do is I'd like to see the 1976 Pittsburgh Steelers play today, and they would get beat by 80 points.
Yep.
First of all. Then I would like to see the the bad boys of Detroit play basketball against the Lakers or Golden State and watch Detroit beat somebody 62-40, and then people in today's NBA be like, oh, shit, that's a whole lot different game. I'm going to get somebody like Nate Coldiron's going to call me out over that.
Yeah.
But
So were you going for Matt Stafford in the Super Bowl, or do you not?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just to prove a point almost, like they have talent in certain individuals at times that are Super Bowl worthy. I mean, there's been plenty of players that have left even mid-season have gone on to contribute to Super Bowl teams. And it's I think everybody in Michigan, except my father-in-law probably, was rooting for Matt Stafford. He was like, well, look at Matt Stafford leaves and he's so good now he's going to the Super Bowl. I was like, whoa, what? It's the team he's on, right?
Well, he blew some games for Detroit too. He made a couple of he's made some bad choices. I don't think he's the greatest quarterback by any means, but he's a very good quarterback.
No.
But
he's got as many rings as Rodgers does.
Detroit can arguably say that y'all have had the greatest running back to ever play the game and the greatest wide receiver to ever play the game.
Well, I appreciate that you've recognized that. I said that same thing to my wife like last week. She looked at me with like this, I don't really I don't get why you're telling me this.
Well, she's from Battle Creek.
Yeah, it was like they've had arguably the greatest running back, and like you said, the greatest wide receiver, and they spent their entire career there. So we had no we couldn't see them go to another team and see where they went, and see if they had that opportunity at the Super Bowl. And Matt Stafford's, he's not on those guys' level, but he's a good quarterback. And to see him leave and to see him have success, I think everybody was kind of rooting for him. They were selling, I think it was Detroit Rams shirts here in Detroit.
They need to drop a banner. Like, fuck it. Just drop a banner, put Stafford's name on it. Like, hey, have his tenure at the Lions there, and then, like, the 1 year. They just drop a fucking banner. You're the Detroit Lions. Do it.
That's as close as you're going to get to a Super Bowl banner.
Y'all drafted Roy Williams, correct?
Yes.
Charlie Rogers, and then Calvin Johnson. Roy Williams was not bad when he played for y'all. He went to the Cowboys and he sucked it up. Charlie Rogers got drunk or something on drugs and was out of the league real quick. Then y'all had Ndamukong Suh, didn't y'all?
Yes.
Great football player. Still's a good football player. So y'all have had some really good picks. Y'all fired some good coaches though. Jim Caldwell was a good coach.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought we would be wishing for those? Like, maybe we'll reach the playoff days. We're well past those. We're like, maybe we'll get to 500. Like, that's being optimistic in any year now.
Okay, so I've checked because I feel like you made me feel like I was speaking out of turn. There are 7 major news organizations that are running that basketball fight story from our little area. So. I'm not in the wrong.
I just can't believe that you. I just think you opened up a can of worms.
Why?
I don't really care.
Well, are they going to have umbrage with Yahoo fucking Sports? Because guess what? It's on Yahoo Sports.
They can't get a hold of the Yahoo Sports guy, but this 18-year-old kid's mama might be coming up here. Crazy Karen coming on your ass.
I didn't say anything. Jeff, facts are facts. What the fuck did I say that was wrong? This happened. Yahoo's running it. Texoma Sports is running it.
You are a school board member, so it's fine. I don't care. She ain't gonna get on my ass if she doesn't. Be like, that's Andy you need to talk to, not me.
She will. So you Clark Griswold it. You got your own Christmas tree. You cut open your hand. How bad was this injury, and did it set you behind at all, or were you able to meet your order deadline?
It was one of those where I cut through all the muscle and down to where I could see in there pretty good.
Hurts me thinking about it.
Yeah. It was the sharpest damn saw I've ever, like, it was just a handsaw, like a tree saw. So it's got those really deep teeth, and it just sliced it in 3 different spots all at once. But I tape it up. I've run like power carvers across my knuckles. It like surface injuries, but I'm really concerned about like losing a finger or something like that. On those late nights when you're working with the bandsaw and it's 2:00 in the morning and you're just trying to push stuff through as fast as you can. That's what's got me concerned.
Those scare me. I was watching a guy, he was cutting through bone. And I mean, he's just
goes the thumb.
Oh boy, that you don't have to fuck up. Just a tiny margin of error is all you're playing on.
Let me tell you, you'll be fine. We got oil field workers out here, and have you ever seen that old show where the guy's the bowler? What's that damn show called? Kingpin.
Yeah,
We got some oil field workers out here that look just like that. So they keep throwing. They got 3 fingers on one foot, and or on a hand. It's just crazy.
They're not using their fine motor skills to pump out gross motor skills.
Yeah,
I've got a story for you. So my wife's cousin, I guess it'd be is that a second cousin or whatever? My wife's cousin, he was in his shop, and he's a younger kid, and he was using a miter saw, and he's trying to hollow out like this box with a miter saw. So he kept dropping it down and moving the box over a little bit and dropping it down. And he kept doing that until, boom, he dropped it down on his thumb. And his thumb's gone. They couldn't even find it, right? Like in the shop. It's totally gone. And he was 18 years old. He was in his senior year of high school. So they're like, you're young enough where we really don't think it's a good idea that you go the rest of your life without your thumb. So they ended up cutting off one of his toes and then sewing it on his thumb. Well, in the process, in between the time he had that surgery and he had lost his thumb, there was like a 2 or 3 month period, and he was like really good at shooting trap. So he's on the school team, and he ended up going and winning the state title with, 2 months removed from losing his thumb. So that was pretty impressive, but it was like it was on like all the major news outlets, and like national news, because they ended up cutting his toe off and sewing it on there. And now I see him at Christmas time and stuff, and it's you can't hardly tell, but that was pretty dramatic.
But now he can't wear flip flops, so you gotta balance things.
Good God Almighty!
Would you?
That's what I was saying. It's not guaranteed that it's going to take.
He can wear go-aheads though.
Yeah, he can wear slides.
Since we've gotten off the subject here, did you see where the Norwegian skier's penis froze?
That's not real.
Yeah, it is too real. Look it up.
Yeah, it was on on our local news. It was like the top headline.
Guy's penis freezes during that right there is an athlete. First of all,
but it's the second time it's happened to him.
I mean, you think you'd get? I think I'm not feeling my penis again. It's gonna freeze.
But how much should you feel your penis? Because I don't feel my penis right now.
Well, you're not that kind of guy, Andy.
How much? Well, that is true. But I mean, how much?
Well, and how is he the only one that had that?
What is he doing wrong?
And that's why there's only white guys in that skiing contest right there.
Finnish cross-country skier suffered a frozen penis during the men's 50-kilometer race on Saturday. It was so frigid outside that the organizers... How did he not get frostbite on his fingers and toes and shit? Why is his penis the first thing that goes?
Big fella, I guess.
I guess so.
Well, he had a 7-pound block of ice down there, folks. That slowed him down a little bit.
Well, is it the? So it looks kind of like he's wearing tights. Maybe it's improper gear, but maybe he bundled up.
Well, he said it's the second time. He ain't a quitter. That's for damn sure.
No, I'd find a difference. I'd pick up curling. That probably generates more ratings.
Well, Finn, how'd your race go today? Well, Mom, my penis froze again. Oh, okay. Well, damn. That away, son.
Admits his penis. He says.
Well, I mean, he's got to be telling everybody. It's on it's on world news.
That's a real case of the blue balls there.
Suffered some hard luck. Well, there's some play on words. His penis was a little bit frozen, he admits.
A little bit frozen.
Probably why he came in 28.
Yeah, well, that slowed him down a little bit.
You can guess which part was a little bit frozen when I finished.
Which part was it, do you think?
It's got to start at the head.
The head or the balls?
It's got to start at the head and work its way back. Okay. So, well, fuck, I don't even know where I was going with this. Yeah. Did you have to get stitches whenever you sliced your hand open? No, you just taped it up and away.
How do they thaw a penis out, you think?
In the microwave.
I mean, you get hypothermia, they put you in a warm bath, right? Then they put they get your blood and they warm it up and they circulate it through it. I mean, they give him a Viagra and give him a blood bath or some shit. I mean, what's going on here?
I think that'd be too much too soon.
You think so?
Yeah. It says here when the body started to warm up, the pain was unbearable. I guess so. Oof. My hand went to sleep the other day. I know how this guy feels.
There ain't no sport worth losing your penis over. Nothing. I don't give a shit. Super Bowl, nothing is worth losing your penis over, especially as a young athlete.
The worst I've ever been through was in Finland one time. So do you know, I mean, is that like a badge of honor among the decoy carvers? Like, hey, look here, I'm missing a digit.
Not if you do it over a Christmas tree.
Yeah, I mean, that was the embarrassing part is like I was there and there's all these little kids running around and, other adults. I'm like, how'd I hurt myself here? But I'll be perfectly honest with you. I'm not like really involved in the decoy carving world. Like I have the people I connect with, but I don't do competitions. Like I made a decision right off the bat. I'm like, this is for hunting. If people like them and they think they're cool, that's great. And I'll just let my customers, speak for me, not blue ribbons. So I never really got that involved in the carving community, which is I think something different I'm doing too.
Right.
I can relate to that because I didn't hang out with a lot of people in the hunt business, and I still don't. I mean, I'm friends with a lot of people through the podcast, but that was just not my. I had to sit, so I understand completely what you're talking about. I would love to go to a carving contest one time, or the convention that they have, the carving convention, just because I'm interested in see. I would love to go there just to see all that stuff. I think
there's a big one in Strongsville, Ohio. That's more of like has got everything from like the decorative guys to the gunning decoys, and they actually have to function, so they'll have them in the pool and they'll have to self-right. So I like that aspect that they're incorporating like the hunting into it and the functionality of it. But I've been around enough people that do it casually to see where I kind of fit, and I've like I said, I've been working with a mentor for almost a decade, so I've gotten a lot of feedback and have seen other students too. I'm actually going to start offering classes up this year. For kind of the beginner carvers.
Where is this thing in Ohio? When is it?
It's Strongsville, Ohio. I think it's Strongsville maybe is the biggest city. But I think it's the second week in March. It's sometime early to mid-March.
Well, your mom's lucky. She almost had to go to Ohio for a couple of days.
How are you going to do these classes? Is it going to be online, or is it all going to be people buy tickets and they come to your shop?
All in person. So I've got a facility that I can use that has classrooms and lodging in it. So it's a really good setup for it. And so that's how and smaller classes, 6 to 8 people. So they can really, when problems come up or they got questions, it's, I don't have to stop a class of 20.
Right.
So
I got a question for you now. On like the buffalo head behind you, how big a block of wood do you start out with to make something like that?
So they're two different pieces. So you got the cork body. Here, I got it right here. Here's a blue wing teal. So like it's a cork body basswood head. So you're starting out with, square blocks of each of those. The head's obviously fairly small. The buffalo head is quite a small bird. You know this from experience, but like you can, I don't know, It's hard to see there. It's probably half the size of like a bluebill. So not very big block.
And how many fuck ups do you have in that before it's just it's no good, before it wouldn't fit that decoy?
I mean, right now I don't. I mean, not to brag, but I don't have fuck ups. They're
so a mallard doesn't become a buffalo head later on.
No. But I can see how it happened with a beginner carver for sure. That's the tendency, is to just carve it down. There's two things that beginner carvers do. They carve it too small. They just keep whittling. They don't know when to quit, or they don't carve things to the round. So their side pockets will be square. If you look at this bird, you want everything to be rounded, and a lot of people just square it off. So those are the two common mistakes. But where I'm at right now, like there's no mistakes.
Only happy accidents.
Afford to have mistakes.
Like Bob Ross says, only happy accidents, no mistakes.
That cork that you had that you're making that decoy out of, what's a cork like that run for a decoy?
So there's a lot in costs of materials. So a sheet of cork is going to run you probably with shipping about $150, and you'll get, 10 to 12 decoys out of that. So, do the math on that.
$15 per cork for a decoy is what you're looking at.
Yep, just for the cork, and then your basswood's going to run you, $3 or $4 for a basswood head for a block that size, and then your eyes are, $4 to $5 for a pair of glass eyes, and then you've got all your texturing and your sealant and your keel and the weights, and so there's a considerable cost in materials, but you could do a rig of a dozen yourself for probably, I don't know, $400.
So here's my dumb question. The glass eyes, do they come different colors and stuff like that, or are they all, I'm looking at Ron's and it's just brown?
Yeah, no, they're all very specific for that species, and even male or, hen or drake. Wow. So there's a wide range of eyes, and you got to make sure those are all matched. They're different sizes. The pupils are different sizes, the colors. So, and there's a lot basically you're going to taxidermy supply. Mm-hmm. Like, you're thinking about it in those terms. You're using the same eyes.
Oh, okay.
You know what's funny? The absolute, to me, worst carved decoy is a fucking wood duck. I don't know why. There's nothing about a wood duck that I find, because it's not something that interests me. No.
Really? That's the number one.
That's what everybody
number
wants?
One decoy.
Yeah, and that just, I would rather have a canvas back, a red head. I mean, just something that just.
What's the aversion to wood duck?
I'm just not a wood duck person. I think a wood duck reminds me of a Kansas City pimp. Just all color. There's something about them. I just don't. There's just nothing about them that just. I'm just not a wood duck person.
I got a buddy who's very anti wood duck, like very anti, because he's like, they're just not a fun bird even to hunt, because they don't really decoy. You're not really calling them in. You just kind of sit on the X and you're guaranteed these birds. And so he's very anti wood duck too, even here in Michigan. But generally, people love the color. I mean, that's the one they're getting to put on the mantle. I enjoy, like, if I was to carve one bird, if I could only carve one the rest of my life, it'd probably be ringneck. Ringneck or shoveler. I really like doing shovelers.
I got a shoveler decoy about 3 months ago, and I don't have it nowhere close to me. And I think it's a cool duck. Just something about it. And I've got a shoveler mounted that I think
they get a
cool
bad
duck.
rap.
They did. They're a pretty duck. They're a beautiful. I think they're one of the prettiest ducks there is. That and a cinnamon teal. But I'm just not a wood duck. I mean, they got all the fancy shit on them and stuff, and I just don't.
Do you sell more of like the wood duck carvings to people that aren't necessarily hunters, that are more like looking for just a shelf piece?
Yeah, like, I've recently, in the past month and a half, I've done a couple rigs of wood ducks, but they tend to be, like that 6 to 12 in a rig. Nobody's getting a bunch of them. So yeah, majority are just one-offs that people are getting engraved and getting them put on shelves. And I do like urns too, decoy urns too. So that's something that when somebody's just going to buy one bird, they want something that looks pretty.
So what would you rather do? Would you rather do the one decoy, or would you rather do like the dozen for the rig?
I don't really have a preference. Sometimes just doing the one is nice because you can really, pay attention to it, and you don't have to try and match, right? So like, I do a set. I want to make sure that my paint, colors, and everything match throughout that entire rig, so it doesn't look like they were done by different people or at different times. Whereas the one, you don't really have that pressure or that constraint. You can kind of be a little bit more creative with that one. But I don't really have a preference. Sometimes it's nice to just have 12 of them to do and have them all lined up, and you're doing the same paint on all 12. So either way.
How hard is that paint? Like you said, if you're doing a rig, you want it all to look the same. You want it to look like it's from the same carver, done at the same time. Is that paint a bitch to work with to get everything blended properly to where it all flows together from one decoy to the next?
You just got to make sure you're mixing quantities that are going to get you through every bird. So like, even grays, you're mixing grays. Well, if you don't match that gray perfectly, you can't get halfway through a bird and then have to go and remix paint. You got to make sure you can get through that whole bird. Otherwise, you'll see that change in slight hue, because there's not a system where I'm like measuring out, grams of this paint and grams of this, to get that right color. Some colors you can buy them just from the factory that are already kind of in that pre-mixed state. So there's there's a line of paints that was kind of designed with Decoy carvers, and so a lot of the colors do work well right out of the bottle.
What was the hardest part of this journey for you? Was it the business aspect? Was it the carving? Was it the painting? Was it just everything all in concert together? Was there one part of this, getting this up and running, where you were just like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get this?
I think it's the pushing through the 120 hours, because I was working in the conservation world, as my day job, and then coming into the shop and working, I'd work 60 hours in the shop, so I was at 110, 120 hours a week in my, I would get up at 6:30, I go and do my day job, come home, have dinner, get our youngest in bed, and eat a family dinner, go right back out in the shop till 2 or 3 in the morning and do it all over again. And I did that for, 6 to 8 months as things were picking up. And it's hard to push through that. And then once you quit the day job, the pressure and the stress to provide, becomes real. You don't have that safety net. So that's also hard for people, especially for me, is not falling back into the safety net, right? I could go get a consulting job, or, I could work part-time, but I just didn't. I wanted, this is what I'm going to do for the next 30 years, 30 plus years. I've made that commitment. It's not going to change, but it's tough to go through that. And it is there's ups and downs, it's not always, it's not always like you've got 100 birds there to do. Sometimes you start getting down towards the end and you're like, well, I hope something comes along. And it has, God's provided everything along the way. So I'm pretty confident that this is the right path for sure.
That is tough sometimes when you're waiting on that phone to ring. Well, I remember days of sitting in that office thinking, God, I wish I've got a bunch of bills coming in. I sure wish somebody'd come book some hunts. And until you work for yourself, you don't really know that. People that just go to work for somebody else and they know they're going to get a check every Friday don't realize, they always bitch it or complain, well, I wish I had your deal. Well, they don't know what it's like to be sitting there waiting around. How's the...
Oh, yeah. They, like you said, Jeff, they don't know what it's like to go through those really slim times, or those times where you're working for nothing, right? You're not making a dime. I didn't make a dime for 2 years, you're working 100 hours a week and not making any money because you're just dumping it right back into the business to try and get it to a point where it's, sustainable.
We lost a group of hunters this year, and it was like a $9,000 hit for me. And one of the guys says, well, Lee, I was sure hoping to get a big tip out of them guys. Well, yeah, I was hoping to not lose $9,000. I was expecting to. You do everybody's payroll around here, and that's a week's wages for everybody. So that's what I lost. But that's all part of doing business. You take the good and the bad. You also do charcuterie boards. Has that done really well for you?
It did initially, and it's I just don't promote it anymore, because that's part of learning the business too, right? Is what do you want to be? How do you want to be seen? And I kind of made a decision about a year ago that this was going to be kind of 100% focused on decoys and the hunting side of things. And so I started moving away from, we did coffee too, which did really well, and the charcuterie boards, but they're not directly related to what I do and what I'm passionate about. And I just felt like it was a time to kind of move away from some of that stuff. There's some things coming up, I'm a big turkey hunter, so I've been playing with this idea and this model for this turkey decoy that I'm gonna see through this entire year. So I'll give it plenty of time to work in the field, that I'm gonna be releasing next year. There's things that are in the works that I'm passionate about that are directly related to hunting, and so I want to take the time to do those things and not take the time to do, coffee and cutting boards and knives. We did, specialty knives too initially. But I just wanted to focus on what I'm good at.
There's a lot of guys that are famous for being carvers, but there ain't one motherfucker out there that's known for being a charcuterie board guy, so I don't blame you for that. Turkey hunting now. I'm not a turkey hunter. Andy's a big turkey hunter. I've never seen a hand-carved turkey, but I saw a guy, and I'm going to come back to this Sandhill crane in a minute, but this turkey deal, what is a hand-carved turkey decoy going to run? Because that's pretty cool.
I've got an idea that it's even in my eyes even cooler than just a hand carved turkey. And I don't know if I want to let the cat out of the
Don't do
bag
it then,
yet,
because I don't want to
but
ruin something that's $1 million idea for you. But that's an interesting deal. I saw a guy.
it's like there's some phenomenal turkey decoy carvers. In fact, I met one. He works with Boss. He Steve Brettel. He carves this amazing turkey decoy where it's got two heads. There's a compartment inside of it, so you can switch it out from a hen or a tom or a Jake, and it's just an amazing hand carve. I don't know what they run. I would guess $2,000 to $3,000. Mine are going to be in the $400 to $500 range. So, but a lot different concept than that.
And then this will be for next year. You're gonna release this for next year, so you're gonna like hunt over it this year and.
Yeah, we're gonna take it to the National Wild Turkey Federation, the national convention next year, and then that's kind of where I'll unveil that. But there'll be a lot of stuff leading up to it. I just want to make sure I've got a good product. And I do a lot of turkey hunting, and I run a lot of like learn to hunt turkey programs. So it'll get a lot of use this spring and fall.
That's badass. I'm looking forward to seeing what you've got up your sleeve for that, because I also
What's Steve's last name that's got the
Brettel?
Spell that.
It's Brettell.
Brettl.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got him.
I think Boss Shot Shells. I think he's probably on some of their stuff.
Brandon
like,
and him are Facebook buddies or Instagram buddies. He's got a lot of cool stuff.
How long does something like that take to do a turkey?
So I'm not sure. Like I've got prototypes like glued up right now in the shop, but I'm not sure what Steve, like how much time he's got into it. But mine will probably be in that, like, I would say 6 to 8 hours range, and it's just going to be a lot of paint in the head.
I can imagine so. And that they've got that incandescent color, the fluorescent kind of green shit. So, oof.
It's going to be a strutting tom is what I'm starting with. So yeah, like the head color, there's a lot of detail in that head.
Oof.
And Steve does a lot of.
Off to you.
He's got some grouse stuff too that's pretty cool. Okay,
Sandhill
crane decoys. I saw a guy had a post the other day about Sandhill crane decoy, and I pissed him off, I guess, because I asked, it was on one of the decoy forums, I said, do you sell them? And I didn't get, oh, no, I don't. I'm making this for my friend or blah, blah, blah. It was like a no, big N-O. I just, don't be an ass. I was interested in buying one, you know. I would like to have a Sandhill crane, a wooden carved Sandhill crane. I've never seen one before. But
yeah, I don't know why. Like, I would take that as a compliment.
Well, obviously,
right?
he didn't. And I don't know what I said other than, do you sell these? Because I was really interested. But he said it took him a lot of time and work. Well, I figured that. I wouldn't expect him to say, yeah, they're $19.95. But I was, what do you sell them for? I mean, and you put a picture of it up.
Yeah, I think I would say anything with like Steve Brettel's, his turkeys. I'm guessing those are going to run. I don't want to quote him for him, but like probably $2,500, $3,000.
Yeah, I mean everything's got a price on the amount of labor it takes to do one. Sandhill crane's the same way. I know it's going to cost more than a bluebill does, but I would be interested in what it would have cost. I just thought it was really interesting until he knowed me like that, and I thought, yeah, you're an asshole, so never mind.
You were just being curious with all that you were doing.
And I found that's funny on some of those decoy deals people carve for their own, and if you ask, do you sell them, some of them get kind of touchy about that. I don't understand that. There's some weird dudes. They're artists.
I don't know how many of them listen to this podcast, but man, it's hit or miss with the carvers. Like they can jump all over you and tear you apart in 2 seconds, or they can be there's like Steve, for instance, just Steve and Willie, like two of the guys that I've talked to and dealt with, just phenomenal people that are willing to tell you all the secrets in carving, just guide you. And then there's just people that are just terrible, and I don't know why that industry or that type of art kind of attracts maybe some people that got bigger egos.
They're artists.
That might be part
They're
of
artists.
it.
They're artsy fartsy, and it's the same with taxidermists. Taxidermists are either they're really the neatest guy in the world, or they're some weird fuckers. There ain't nothing in between in them. They're either really good guys, or you just don't want that. There's a reason they're stuck in a shop by themselves with nobody around them. and is what it is.
Yeah, that's what I found
But
too.
I've noticed
sure.
that with a couple of carvings. But I will, that's how I've got my collection of my carvings is I'll see something I like and I'll ask about it. And half the time you get really receptive, really nice people that are interested. They want to sell their stuff. And then the other half of them are just total jackasses. But the Sandhill crane guy was not a fan of Jeff Stanfield's. I can tell you that. And I don't know what I did other than ask him if he sold them because I thought it was neat because I'd never seen one done.
Do you have any Sandhill crane decoy? Like, do you have a hand carved one?
No, I've never seen one ever.
Oh.
That's the only one I'd ever seen even. That's what interested me about it. I've got a swan, I've got all kinds of stuff, but I'd never have seen a crane decoy. I saw a guy the other day that's got some speckle belly decoys that were really cool, and I hadn't seen very many of those, and they were really good looking. I can't remember his name. He was a real nice guy. We'd back and forth on messaging, and he was tied up for another year. He didn't have any openings for a year. But that's people are interested, and I've never understood people that sell stuff that are shitheads to anybody that asks about their stuff. I got a guy calls me about opening weekend of dove season. I'm booked up. He got all pissy with me because I was booked up. I thought, well, bud, I'm booked up. I'm sorry, but I even try to call people back. I bet I've had 50 snow goose conservation hunt calls in the last 3 weeks or in a month. I get them all the time, and I try to call people back or email them and say, listen, we don't sell conservation goose hunts, instead of just not calling them back at all. But it saved me a lot of time and hassle just to push delete. But I try to be nice and call people back and say, hey, I appreciate you calling, but we're booked up for the year, or we don't have that available, or I've got goose dates open still, and so anybody calls me, please call. If I don't have a date available, then I'll tell you. But I do have dates available for this year. But I can't imagine just being an asshole to people when shit. But it's a world we live in. Joe Biden's world.
Yeah, I just we go to these shows and stuff, and we have booths set up, and it's funny because you'll get people that come by and they're almost like offended at the price of some of these decoys. Like they're offended by
crazy.
It, and because they don't really have a reference. Sure. They're looking at like an Avian X or something. Comparing it to a plastic. And so that's the tough part for me is like not taking offense to them being offended by it and being defensive and being like, yeah, but do you guys know how many hours I got into this and how much money this takes and the skills that you got to develop? I don't really get into any of that with them. I'm just like, well, it's not for everybody.
Right.
That's usually always my response.
That would be tough though, because it's like, on the one hand, like, I don't know, you can be like me and like try to educate them, like, listen here, motherfucker, like there's steps here. Like I didn't just shit this out. I wasn't born a fucking decoy carving savant. Like it took me X amount of years to get to this point to be able to sell a decoy that even looks worth the shit that I'd put on my counter to sell to you.
Or to hunt over. I mean,
but then on the other side, it's like, is that even fucking worth the argument? Like, just let him go on and so.
That's not my clientele, right? Like they ultimately don't end up being my clients.
It doesn't matter what you tell that guy, he's not buying a fucking decoy.
No. So like I can't get caught up in that. It's similar to what you guys do, right? Like you develop this skill set over years and years to be able to charge somebody money for something that they could go do theoretically. They could go do for cheaper,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's hard not to take offense if someone came to you and was like, I can't believe you guys charge that for a hunt, right? And you're like, yeah, but this is my skills. I'm giving you my skill set and my resources, and my time. And so I think it's pretty similar to anything that you've worked a long time at to develop a skill, and then someone comes in and tells you, I don't think it's worth that much.
Wait a second.
Been down that.
Everybody just fucking flares up. But you go, wait a fucking minute.
I've been down that road before. People do not concept money a lot of times, and not just like my wife when she's shopping, but just the actual. People amaze me. I had a guy one time book a hunt. 8 people. How much is it? It's $300. Okay. So he gets here with 8 people.
You think it was 300
for the group?
Oh my
I
gosh.
can't remember the exact number of people, but it was a big group, and this has been years ago. But I was like, yes, and it was one of them deals where it was like, do you have an opening on a Wednesday? And it was on a Monday, and I was like, yeah, actually, I do have a room on Wednesday for 8 people. Okay, how much is it? It's $300. Okay, so he shows up. Not only did he show up to want to hunt, but he expected me to feed him, put him in a lodge and everything for $300. And so he goes, okay, we'll settle up. And he gives me $300. I said, okay. And the next guy looked at me. I said, you want to do you don't do credit card, check, cash? We do. Well, I thought he paid. He paid for him. And the guy, I mean, it's turned into a big fucking deal. I'm like, listen, dude. So finally I told him, I said, do you really honestly think I'm going to feed you, put you up 8 guys for $300? A big whopping $38 a person or some shit? Really, honestly? Oh, no, I can't believe it's $300 a person. Have you checked with another outfitter anywhere? That's pretty much the going rate everywhere. Yeah. Well, can you work us out a deal? Yeah, $300 a freaking person. You mean we drove out here to not get a hunt? Yeah, if you think you're going to pay $300 for 8 of you, that's exactly right. But people...
Yeah, I mean, that's good that you, like, guides, it's pretty easy to find comparable pricing, right, for guides. Right? Like, you can just look, you can Google it, and you can be like, well, this goose hunts this, that goose hunts that. That's the problem in my industry, is that it's not easy to do a Google search and figure that out. Like, you can't, like, there's very few people that are listing prices online.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you have guys out there that buy 3 or 4 decoys a year to build their spread over a 10-year period? Yep. See, I can see that happening because because the guy that's going to be hunting over these is probably hunting on some property that he either owns or it's family land, or he's hunting public, and he wants to get away from using the plastic and give something to give to his grandkids and kids one day. I admire that, and I think that's really neat. And I would like to have a guy that, I don't know what you would call him, a naturalist. I would like to have a guy on the podcast that was that kind. Lee Chose reminds me of a kind of guy that would be somebody like that. Mm-hmm. Just someone that really appreciates the old things in life. I know a guy.
Yeah, I ran into him last weekend. I met Lee last weekend up at. You did? Yeah. He was, awesome guy. But you can tell he appreciates that traditional way of doing things and trying to keep things kind of focused on that, or highlighting that aspect.
I've got a guy in Texas that hunts on the coast, that hunts over, and he hunts in my area, not very far from me, and he hunts with traditional. He uses a Parker shotgun, and he's got a bunch of old hand-carved decoys that he's gotten off the East Coast over the years. And I'm fixing to buy a widgeon decoy from him that he's used all these years. It's all beat up, and but to me, it's got character, and I can relate it to someone, and to get that for me means something to me.
Yeah, there's a client of mine out on, he's Chesapeake Bay, and he kind of rotates between carvers. He's got decoys from all over the country, and he kind of like, he wants to incorporate all these different styles into his decoy rig. And so that's kind of what he does on an annual basis, is kind of look at different carvers and get some, a few decoys or a few dozen from each carver. And then I've got clients that'll do, like, instead of getting a bird mounted for the 41 species, they'll get a decoy carved, and maybe they rotate around carvers too, but to kind of commemorate that.
That's a really good idea. I might have to try that. I saw a post a couple of days ago on one of the decoy pages on Facebook. A guy's like, hey, could y'all help me with this? My uncle died, and I was in his basement, and this sumbitch has got hundreds of decoys there, a lot of them wood carved and stuff. I'm like, well, I ain't gonna get no deal on this thing now. But I was thinking, man, why couldn't I have found that before he got a hold of this page? I mean, there was all kinds of stuff that he had in there, old tins and all kinds of shit. And I thought, man, somebody is going to take somebody to the cleaners on this deal probably, or someone just inherited a ton of money.
But that's what I like about it too. Like, besides just selling decoys to people and trying to earn a living doing that, like, knowing that what you're creating, it's similar to what you guys are doing. You're creating a memory that, like, is going to live on for people. That's kind of how I view some of the intrinsic value to this, is that regardless of what happens in the future, these decoys are going to be sitting on people's shelves or being hunted over for decades. Right. And there's not a whole lot, especially in the hunting world or hunting industry, that you can buy and know that you're still going to use it in 30 years from now, or your kids are going to use it in 40 years from now.
Other than a gun, you're right.
Right, yeah, guns. I mean, no plastics, right? Like,
and especially right now.
Not to slam on plastic.
Well, and that's especially the attitude right now, is just, let's mass market everything and let's get as much shit out there to as many people as we can. But stuff like that doesn't last. It doesn't get passed on to generations. It doesn't go from father to son to grandson. Whereas what
Yeah, and
you're
I think
doing,
you need that.
it's something that will appreciate in value.
That Corey Lucas first decoy you did, 100 years from now, might be worth $5 million. You never know. I mean, how many of the original decoys that are worth so much money right now did those guys get rich off of carving? None. There ain't a guy carving decoys on the Chesapeake Bay in the late 1800s and 1900s that was getting rich from carving decoys.
So you're fucked is what he's saying right now. But
You're
your
an
kids
artist.
and your grandkids,
Yeah.
maybe.
You're an artist.
I've accepted
Yeah,
that.
but I
fact.
mean, you're an artist, and your artwork is going to be worth more when you're dead a long time. When there's dogs shitting on your face at the funeral yard, that's when you might be worth some money. Your decoys. But am I telling the truth though? Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah, I understand that, and that's kind of where, like, you can't live for today if you're doing this decoy carving. Like, it's got to be more than that. If you're just carving for tomorrow or carving to make a buck, you will die out. You'll be burnt out. You won't last. You got to look at the bigger picture. And the other thing, like, I want to say too, is that I don't really discount the plastics, and like Dive Bomb does a great job of getting things out there that are affordable to get more people into waterfowling, right? Or to allow them to grow their skill set. And if you didn't have those, if you didn't have the plastics, you didn't have the silhouettes, there'd be people that just couldn't do it because they couldn't afford to. So I really have appreciation for those, but I always look at it like a progression for a waterfowler is like you start with that stuff. You start with a hand-me-down, and then you start with purchasing your own rig of plastics or whatever. And then like the epitome is hand carved decoys. Like you kind of can't go any further in the decoy world than that. And the other aspect is you're using something in the field in the water that birds aren't used to seeing.
Right.
Like they're different. They're not, if they're flying by and they're seeing the same set of avian X, there may be something on the decoys that are triggering them and their learned behavior over time. And then all of a sudden there's a spread that's doesn't look like all the ones they're getting shot at over. So I think there's still some value in just the functionality of hand carved too. Plus they float better. Some of the guys on the East Coast, they like them because they actually function better in those tidal waters where the water's choppier. They just don't bob as much as the
They
plastics.
got more weight
But
that
I think
kinda keeps them
ultimately, yeah, they're the actual density of a real duck, density and weight. But I think the plastics, that's what I got started. And I just got to the point where I was like, well, I don't really like how the color on those side pockets on the mallards are. And you could repaint plastics, but I'm like, well, why don't I just try and carve my own?
Well,
So
everybody's got their own place in the market, and everybody is appealing to a certain hunter of a certain mindset. Just like you said, Dive Bomb's done an incredible job. They make an affordable decoy for the person that, they don't necessarily have the money for. Number one, we couldn't run a spread of just hand carved full bodies because we run so many decoys. So guys that are hunting lessers, guys that are hunting big numbers of snow geese or speckle bellies, that's the niche of Dive Bomb. Or the guys that I've got $400 and I need 5 dozen decoys. Dive Bomb is perfect for you. I mean, you can build a spread that way. But like you said, there's progressions, and as you progress in the sport, you'll have your dive bombs, but then hopefully you start making more money as you age, and then you can invest in a hand carved decoy. You can call yourself up and say, hey, I want 6 of these. And maybe you don't hunt with them every day. Maybe you only hunt with them whenever it's a close group of friends or family or your sons. But, everybody's kind of got their own little niche that they can kind of fall in line, and their customers find them.
Yeah, and that, like, I looked at it when we go back to our conversation about like building this business and what were some of your thought processes. One of them was what has like survived the times, right? Like what is continuing to be used through all these different changes in technology and the hunting industry? What's still valued? Maybe not as much as it was back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, but definitely still has value. And these hand carved decoys are going to remain, quote unquote, in style for the life of waterfowl hunting, I believe. And so there's always going to be a place for them.
Well, and you look like Pacific a month or so ago. They made a small run on wooden goose calls. Fuck, they sold out. But it goes back to that. This is a shelf piece. This is something that I can pass down to my kids. This is something I can put on my lanyard. It's fully functional. But it's just something about that wood, and you see the time and the effort and the craftsmanship that has gone into it, and it's something that appreciates in value later on down the line.
You can go in any waterfowler's home in the world. I don't care if they're living on the fringe of poverty or they're a billionaire, and they're going to have something duck related in their house. Every one of them is going to have a decoy. They're going to have a mount, or they're going to have calls. They're going to have their calls put up. They all do. There's nothing. I mean, deer hunters don't have. I mean, they got some deer heads, and that's it. But you go to a waterfowler's house. It's a true waterfowler, and every house has got something in it that shows you their passion for waterfowl hunting.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, like, especially with the decoys, even people that aren't waterfowlers. If you live on a lake, you've got a decoy in your house somewhere. And in Michigan, there's lakes everywhere. So I mean, I've had clients that have bought decoys. They're not duck hunters. They're just like, we enjoy watching the ducks out back, and we get a lot of wood ducks in here, and we want one for the shelf. So it opens you up into a different, demographic too. That's not necessarily my target demographic, but there's some added bonuses there.
They pay the same.
Exactly. Yeah.
What was it like getting your wife on board with this? Was she pretty receptive, or did you kind of like have to?
You always ask the questions nobody wants to answer.
It was my wife's idea.
See there, fuck you, Jeff.
Yeah. Like it was. So I was working my day job, and I was carving a lot in the evening anyway, just kind of like for my own rig, or somebody would ask me for a bird or whatever. I was doing it. I was carving quite a bit. And one day I got home from work, and she's like, said I'm gonna go carve for a little bit. And she's like, why don't you try and sell some of those decoys? Like, I feel like you got a pretty good skill that you're just kind of sitting on, like, why don't you try and sell those? And I was like, and I'm a very like private person when it comes to, something that you're working hard on, this skill and this, quote unquote art. It's hard to put it out there for the world and get the feedback. Right. So I was a little hesitant. But once she said that, I was like, okay, well, why don't I just start an actual business, right? That's like legitimate. And that was kind of the idea, is kind of do it as a hobby on the side. Within like 2 or 3 months, I knew it wasn't going to just be a hobby. It was growing too quickly. And then, within 6 months to a year, I knew it was going to be a full-time gig real quick. So, it was actually her idea. And so she's been super supportive, because I'm out here at night, and it's long days. But she knows that it's just part of the grind right now.
When were you comfortable in quitting your quote unquote day job and pursuing this full time? When did you know, like, okay, this is a business?
When I was getting, the orders were starting to build, and it was around Christmas time. So I was kind of thinking, well, orders are building just for Christmas gifts. And this was in 2020, which, during the pandemic, and all the business is just online. We couldn't do any shows or anything like that. So it's starting to build. And I was thinking, well, this is just going to be the Christmas rush. We got into like January, February, and I got like 2 massive orders. I mean, one was $20,000 plus decoy rig order. Like that was like, well, I'm all set for the next, few months on just that one order. And then they just started coming after that. And I knew like by, March of that year that, okay, this isn't going to slow down. Right. This is going to be pretty consistent. And then, especially going into Christmas in 2021. So it has grown every quarter, and I expect it to continue to do that. And I, ultimately I don't want to just be carving all day, every day. Like I can't sustain that. So that's where like having a brand that people can support, even if they can't, or aren't able to purchase decoys at this point, or it's not something that they're going to do. There's still ways they could support the brand. So we're looking at some of those ideas.
Do you have anybody that helps you at all in the shop, or is this a one-man band?
Yeah, so I've had, depending on the rush, so I've had some times where I'm 150, 160 decoys behind. My son, he's 21, he just turned 21. He's gotten really good at some of these processes that I don't want to say anybody could do, but with some minimal teaching could do. So he's, sealing and texturing, maybe even blocking in paint sometimes. Nobody's carving. I've got a business partner, Boyd, who's come over and helped me at times, like with cutting out, rough cutting them out of blocks. So some of the processes you can get people to do, we've had a painter that's, like he's done a lot of painting in his life and he's got an art degree, but he's an avid duck. Everyone's got to be a duck hunter. That's the key. Like there's no like spreading this out. They have to have a passion for it. And so I've had people help me at times, but generally it's me.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Well, listen, man, this has been it's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed. We've kept you an hour and a half, and I know you got better things that you could be doing. But tell people
there's nothing better than talking duck hunting and carving.
That's how we started this podcast, just bullshitting about things we love to do.
Tell people how they can get a hold of you. What's the best? Is there a website, Instagram, phone? How do you want people to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I would say check out the website if you're interested in our decoys and want to shoot me an email. So our website's www.cedarrundecoys.com. We're on Instagram and Facebook. I've got a couple buddies, Kai Carlson and Eric Schaefer, who are phenomenal photographers that have helped me with maintaining somewhat of a presentable social media presence. So Instagram is Cedar Run Decoys. I think it's the same on Facebook. Just search for Cedar Run Decoys.
Do you do geese also? I didn't even ask you that, or you just do ducks?
I haven't done them. I do things like that on request. Like I'm doing quail or sharp-tailed grouse right now on request. So I'll do other things on request. So yeah, I certainly could do geese, but I don't advertise it.
Is it just boring or what? Paint's kind of simple or
not as big a demand.
Not as big as demand?
Yeah, it's a demand thing. I think it's hard for people to put those on a shelf, so there's like less demand for it. And I don't advertise it. So maybe I could, and that would be, but it's just not something. It takes a lot more material. It's going to be more costly.
Well,
you do great work.
Corey, I appreciate you being on here.
Thank you.
Look forward to meeting you in person one day.
Yeah, I think I need to come down there and book a hunt with you guys and bring some buddies.
We'd love to have you. We'd love to have you. We appreciate you very much. Thank you. God bless you, man. Have a great year. And if there's anything we can do to help you, please let us know.
I appreciate you guys having me on. It's been a blast.
Thank you. For,
honor for us to have you on with us.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We really appreciate it. Thank you,
All
sir.
right.
You have a good day.
Thanks, guys.
Interesting guy.
Yeah, it is. A lot of just the hours that he's spent alone in a shop honing in on his craft.
God, I couldn't imagine what my first one would look like if I did it. Whew.
You think it would look as good as his?
No, not even close.
Like I said, mine would look like there's a decoy somewhere out here. No, what am I thinking about?
I don't know, but mine would look like some of the.
I think Reese and I could probably start at the same time, and he might get a better looking decoy than
Reese
me.
has got a lot of artistic ability, though. I don't know that you don't, but
I'm just saying, mine would probably look like that decoy over there, that old one with it.
That old Brant. That's a cool old decoy, though. But that's just an old block some guy, probably Market Hunter, had, because that's an old decoy.
Very unsophisticated.
But
it looked like that fucking canvasback right there.
I like collecting old stuff, and I like that old Brant. That's a cool little thing. I bought that on eBay a long time ago.
Well,
I just like old looking stuff.
It's it has a story to every one of them. Has a story and a character, and
yes,
is it feasible for every hunter to have a set of hand carved decoys to hunt over? Absolutely not. But for the person that wants a dozen to hunt in their backyard or a small pond or put up on a shelf somewhere,
that would be cool. Well, I'm a collector, and I'm just telling how many my grandkids are going to get to inherit one day, but they're going to have a bunch of them. And I just hope one of them has a passion for them and loves them, and he'll keep them and toss them on to his grandkids. All right. Thank y'all for listening to us. You know what? We're going on vacation tomorrow.
We will be,
are you nervous?
God willing, we'll be in Mexico whenever this is released.
Yeah,
Actually, we'll be coming back because this will be on Monday. So God willing, we're coming back from Mexico when this is released.
Well, we're going to have, I'm not, if we get delayed down there 2 or 3 days, it's not a big deal for me and Mom. Now, you, it is because you have kids to get home
We're
to.
not going to get delayed, but I just mean.
Well, I'm worried about getting over there with because the ice and shit.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. God willing, we're coming back from Mexico right now. No, once we get down there, I have no. The weather's going to be in the 60s on Monday, so a little bit of ice that we got to go through.
They've changed our forecast again just to go look to more sleet and ice this week for
Jesse
tomorrow.
Jesse got an email that said, as of right now, your travel plans have not changed, but.
She did get an email that said that?
From American.
Oh, that's great. Well, we'll know tomorrow. So anyways, thank y'all for listening to us. God bless you. We appreciate y'all so much. Check out our sponsors. It's March already. Hunting season's going to start in about 6 more months.
When this releases,
it'll be March.
It'll be February 28th. But you're 6 months from Dove Eve.
Dove Eve. That's right. All right. Thank y'all. God bless y'all. Have a great day.
Go check out all of our great sponsors before you leave here. Check out Pacific Calls, Boss Shot Shells, Dive Bomb Industries, Alpha Outdoors, Shin Gear Waders, Dirty Duck Coffee, Gundog Outdoors, State Plains Meat, Stanfield Hunting Outfitters, Lucky Duck, and the Looking Glass Duck Club podcast.